All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here. This is our first STARS College Advising Team webinar, and we are very thrilled to have you here. I'm here. My name is Phil, if you haven't met me yet. I am the Senior STARS College Advisor at WashU. I'm working with the STARS College Network and the rest of my team. I'm happy to have my team here working on the back end for us today, Natalie Benny and Ellie Self, two of our other advisors. And they are going to be running our Q&A feature. So right now in the webinar, you should have an option to open up Q&A. And if you have any questions at any point that come up during the presentation, you are very welcome to type them in that Q&A, and they will get to answering that for you and getting you that. They may also raise a couple for me to answer at the end. We will try to leave time for questions. But for right now, I would love to dive in because there's a lot of ground I would like to cover with you this evening. So to start us off, on our webinar, I want to talk a little bit about who we are at the STARS College Network and what we do. We are a group of 32 highly selective colleges and universities that have all made a commitment to work with students from small town and rural communities. And our goal there is to reach out and increase the proportion of students from those communities who are applying to schools like ours and who are being accepted to schools like ours. We're also building communities on campus, rural student alliances. There's one at WashU, there's one at UChicago, quite a range of schools that are recognizing small town talent and seeking to bring it to campus. And we are very excited this year to be launching our new pilot initiative, to which I think virtually all of you are signed up. If you haven't yet, we can talk about how you can be, for one-on-one advising with our 10 partner schools across Missouri and Illinois. So very excited to have you here, very excited to chat with you. We're working in many schools in partnership with the counselors and with the RUDAD advisor to provide really targeted advising for students who are interested in applying to some of these more selective competitive schools. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how it's different as we go through our presentation today. Now, here's a brief overview of what we're going to cover over the next roughly an hour. We're going to talk about what it means to be a highly selective school. We're going to talk about the application review process and how that looks specifically for highly selective schools. We're going to talk a little bit about match and fit, thinking about where you may want to apply and once you're accepted, where you may want to choose. And we're going to talk about some application tips, some things that may help you get admitted to these very competitive schools. But let's start out with some definitions. When we say the word selective, what we mean is a measure of how difficult it is to be admitted, or in numbers terms, what percent of students who apply to a school are being admitted there. And I want to be clear that most colleges and universities in the US are not selective institutions. They are pretty open institutions in the number of students that they're admitting. Community colleges and technical schools, for example, St. Louis Community College, East Central College, State Tech in Lynn in Missouri, these are schools that are open enrollment. They take all students who apply. You apply, you have a high school diploma, you are in, you are able to take classes there. A lot of our other state schools and some of our private schools, like Columbia College, are also schools that take a majority of their applicants. We can see here that Missouri State is pretty open, 92% of applicants. Truman and Mizzou, a little bit more selective, 80%, 79%, but that's still 4 in 5 students. And your Columbia College, your Missouri S&T, these are schools that are taking 3 and 4 students. So reasonably open as we look through those rates. Now, selective colleges, what sets them apart is that they have more applicants than they have spots for. That might mean that they are a pretty small school and they get a lot of applications, or it might mean that they're a big school, but they get even more applications than their student body can sustain. So for example, at WashU, every year we get about 32 to 33,000 applications for about 1,800 spots in our class. Now we make more than 1,800 offers because not everyone we accept comes to WashU, but we still can't take more than, we aim a little under 4,000 offers of admission in a given year, which gives us about a 12% admit rate. And that's not because we are necessarily better than any of the schools that have higher acceptance rates. It's because we are a fairly small school, about 7,500 undergrads. We have a 7-to-1 student-faculty ratio, and we have a lot of people who are interested in WashU. We simply don't have space for all of them while maintaining that student-faculty ratio and our smaller campus experience. So a selective college, we say, has an admit rate of less than 50%, and a highly selective college, we say, is less than 30%. So 1 in 3 students is being admitted to a highly selective, roughly, if they're on the higher end. So what kind of colleges fall into this category? There are actually a few different types, or broad buckets of college, that can be considered highly selective. Two that I want to point out that we don't always think about are military service academies and music or performing arts conservatories. All of the service academies in the United States, whether that's the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, the Naval Academy in Annapolis, the Army Academy at West Point, the Merchant Marine Academy, all of these places have less than a 20% acceptance rate. Annapolis is actually the hardest one to get into at 9%. And they, like many highly selectives, have some very strict requirements to even complete an application. You actually need a congressional letter of recommendation to even apply. So that can be a very challenging process to navigate. Similarly, some of the top music and performing arts conservatories in the US have some of the lowest acceptance rates of any college. Depending on the year, the Curtis Institute of Music may have the lowest acceptance rate of any college in the US at 2%. Juilliard, famously a wonderful, amazing performing arts school, about a 9% acceptance rate after multiple rounds of auditions that are also part of the process, in addition to reviewing academics and other pieces. The two that we more often think about are top state universities and top private colleges. Some state university systems, I put up here the University of Michigan, the University of Virginia, and the University of California system, are schools that are actually quite large, but they get a tremendous number of out-of-state applications because they're really well known for having a lot of programs that are very strong. And these schools tend to have under a 20% admit rate because they reserve some blocks of students for students from their state, applicants from their state, but they still also do accept students from outside the state, but it's very competitive to get in there. Similarly, the ones that we usually think of also fall in this category. It's our top private colleges. Your WashU at an 11 or 12% rate. Your Vanderbilt is a 6%. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, 3 or 4% in a given year. So very challenging to be admitted to. They're smaller. They're very well known. They get tens of thousands of applications every year. So how does that look for application review? Most selective colleges don't have their own application. If you apply to East Central College or to Mizzou or to State Tech, there is an ECC or Mizzou or State Tech application that you can go to their website and fill out. Most highly selectives don't do that. We'll look at types of application in a minute, but in general, you're applying through a big internet-based platform that also works for multiple schools. And the other thing that really sets highly selectives apart when you're applying is that they use what's called holistic review, looking at the whole student, the whole application. So what we mean by that, if you apply to Mizzou, they're doing an academic type of review. They have a sliding scale for admission. So if you have a certain GPA, let's say a 2.0, then you need a 24 or higher ACT for Mizzou to consider you ready for Mizzou classes and be admitted. Whereas if you have a much higher GPA, a 3.65 or higher, you only need a 17 ACT. So it's kind of a balance. If you're a strong test taker, but you've struggled in some classes, or if it's the other way around, you've struggled in some classes, you've done great in classes, but you struggle on tests, you can still be admitted there. And a lot of their merit-based scholarships will be based on high GPA, high ACT score as well. At WashU or at Princeton or at UCLA, they have way too many really strong academic applicants to be able to do that while maintaining their class size. At WashU, with the number of applicants from just the state of California alone, who are valedictorians alone, we could fill our class. So we have to not just look at academics, not just test scores, not just grades. We have to look at other pieces to kind of craft a class and a community that we're admitting. So we're looking at other pieces. We're looking at activities lists. We're looking at essays. We're looking at letters of recommendation. We're considering a lot more as we kind of craft that process. So really that boils down into the difference between an admissions index, which you'll see at many state schools, and holistic review, which is a much more, a longer process, a more complicated process that looks at a lot of different aspects of the student and the student's application. So what is the admissions committee actually looking for when they look at all that information? They are looking for students who come from different backgrounds and experiences who are going to contribute to the community. And that's one of the reasons that we have these rural student initiatives right now. At most selective colleges, rural students are a little bit underrepresented. One in three people in high school in the US right now is at a rural school. That is a huge percentage. And most highly selectives, 10%, 6% of students are from smaller towns. And we're working to change that. So that is something that we look for, but we also look for students from cities, we look for students from other countries, we look for students with all kinds of different backgrounds to build our community. And we're looking for the person who kind of fits in the middle with academic fit and community fit. What that means is we want someone who's going to be successful at our school academically, who's shown that they're ready. All of us tend to have really, really good year-to-year persistence rates. We don't have a lot of students who fail out. At WashU, 92% of students complete their degree within 4 years. That is a very high percentage, one that we're very, very proud of. And we want to keep that high by admitting students who are ready to be successful at WashU. But we also want students who are bringing capacities beyond just the classroom to our campus. We want students who are active and engaged and passionate, who bring values that align with ours about curiosity and science and compassion and empathy and willingness to have dialogue. And those are values that we as an institution have. Every institution has different values. Some highly selectives are faith-based, and they're looking for people who have strong faith identities. College of the Ozarks is a highly selective in Missouri, about a 20% acceptance rate that has a very strong faith-based component to what they're looking for community fit. And when we find someone who is a good fit for our community and also can do the work, that's a student that we want to admit. So how do we show that? And why is it hard to predict? Why can't we just say right off the bat, hey, this is a student who will get into our class? A couple different reasons for that. Decisions are based on our institutional priorities and goals. And what that means is that we look at a lot of different pieces. We want to make sure that we're filling different programs. If everyone who applies to WashU applies for computer science, we have a problem because we have over 100 other majors. We got to make sure that we spread out who we're admitting where a little bit. And we want to make sure every college wants to boast they have students from all 50 states, for example. So that really is a boost often for people from North Dakota or from Wyoming or from West Virginia. Many colleges, like the STARS Network colleges, are prioritizing admitting rural students. Many colleges want to say that they admit low-income or first-gen students and provide that support. Colleges also want to make sure that they have full-pay students who tend to come from wealthier backgrounds so they can provide financial aid for students who are not able to pay full price. So there's a balance there, and we can't always predict what that's going to look like in a given year. The evaluation is also objective and subjective. For a review process like WashU, 2 people read every application, all 33,000, for the initial review. And those 2 people look at your academics, which is very objective, and they also look at your community fit qualities, which can be very subjective, the way that we think about that. And those 2 people make a decision about whether that applicant is going to be competitive. And if that applicant is competitive, we move them forward to committee. And then even more people talk about that applicant. A whole room of people review that applicant's application. And we all talk about how we're going to craft a class representing students from all over the US. Each of us has a territory that we cover, and we present students from that area. And the priorities that I had when I was representing Missouri and Kansas and Utah and a few other states were very different from the views and priorities that we have one representative representing the Bay Area of California. We have people who are representing New York City, who have a very different student population that they work with. And so there can be subjective components to this as well as we craft a class. And every year is very different in the way that federal policy affects the way that we recruit, in the way that institutional priorities affect the way we recruit. So it's very difficult to predict who will be admitted. We just try to put our best foot forward when we have applicants and evaluate fairly and craft the best class that we can. So I want to say up front, if you are not admitted to one of these schools, it does not mean you did anything wrong. It is always a challenge to be admitted to a highly selective school. That's why it's good to apply to more than one and have schools that are less selective options, which are often as good or better in some programs, also on your docket to apply to. There are a few different types of application. We mentioned earlier that a lot of state schools and community colleges and technical colleges have you apply directly to the institution. So you go to Mizzou's website and you fill out the Mizzou application. Most highly selectives don't do that. They partner with one of these other programs. Most of them, over 1,000 or nearly 1,000 colleges, use the Common Application, which is the one that I typically recommend. This is an online platform that allows you to apply to up to 20 colleges at the same time. Don't apply to 20 colleges, that's too many. You will drive yourself crazy, in my opinion. But you could apply to 7. That's what I did when I applied to college. I got into 3. I was waitlisted at 1. I was denied from 3. So that can be a good balance. You could apply to 10 if you want to push yourself. You can also apply to 3. But I would encourage you to apply to multiple, and the Common App is an easy way to do that because you put in your core information once, and all of that information goes to multiple different colleges. So whether you're applying to WashU or UChicago or someone who is not part of the STARS network, Common App can be a great way to do that. And I do want to be clear, wherever you're applying does not have to be a STARS school. We are here to support you in doing that. That is the purpose of our program. Sometimes I say we when I'm talking about WashU because I still work for them, but broadly I mean that the STARS network will support you wherever you're applying. Now, there's also the coalition application. This is one that looks a lot like the Common Application in many ways, but it is a smaller list of institutions, about 150 different colleges. And these ones are interesting because they have signed an agreement that all of them are promising to have special financial aid support for lower income students. So if you are someone who is very concerned about taking on debt for college or wants to make sure they're getting strong financial aid, looking at the list of institutions that use the coalition application can be kind of reassuring to see that they all have this strong financial aid commitment. You might also be interested, this is more for the juniors because it's a little late to start this year for seniors, in the QuestBridge application. We don't have time to get into QuestBridge in depth right now, but it is a college match program that guarantees a full ride scholarship to people who are match finalists in the QuestBridge program. So that can be a really, really great way to get college paid for if that's something you're concerned about. So in addition to different types of application, there are different rounds of application. And this can really have a pretty strong effect on your chances of admission and the way that you apply to a given school. At a school like WashU or UChicago or Yale, there's often a regular decision round, which is just standard applying to college, and an early decision round. And what sets early decision apart is that it is a binding agreement. What that means is you can only apply early decision to one college, and you have made a commitment that if you're admitted there, you are going there. You are going to drop your application to every other college. Now, why would you do that? The major reason is that typically early decision has a higher acceptance rate than regular decision does. At WashU, the overall acceptance rate with regular decision involved is 11 or 12%. For early decision, 26%. You've more than doubled your chances. So the advice I give on this is if you know where your dream school is and you're not as worried about financial aid, you are confident you're going to get the financial aid you need to go there, then early decision will help you. But if you are very nervous about paying for school, reach out to their financial aid office before you apply early decision. Make sure it's going to work for you. And if you are still keeping your options open, do not apply early decision because that may result in you getting bound to a college that you don't actually end up having be your first choice. So think about that carefully. Early action is a lot like early decision. You hear back earlier, and there is sometimes a higher acceptance rate, but it is non-binding. You can apply to multiple schools, typically early action, and you do not have to go there. You just hear back early. A lot of state schools, your Missouri S&T, your Mizzou, have rolling admission. They don't have a hard and fast deadline or early rounds. You apply, you hear back in 2 to 6 weeks. They review applications on a rolling basis throughout the year. So that can be easy. And as I mentioned earlier, state technical colleges and community colleges are typically open admission. You fill out the application, you don't have to hear back because you're in. So very, very different vibes, different strategies if you're applying to a highly selective. Here's a little bit of a summary of rounds and deadlines. Early decision, typically you'll see a deadline in early November for early action as well. So if that is something you were considering, I would be working on that application now. You have about a month. If you are rolling, you may have already heard from some colleges that are rolling if you've submitted those applications. I know a few students I've met with are already admitted to rolling admission colleges, which is fantastic. Regular decision for most highly selectives is going to be mid-December to early January. At WashU, it's January, usually between 2nd and 4th. When you hear back is going to vary a little bit depending on that, but This is something that we are happy to send out and chat with you, but you can also find all of these deadlines on the websites of individual colleges that you may be applying to. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about match and fit. My hope for everyone on this call is that you are going to apply to multiple colleges and be admitted to multiple colleges. And that will be a great day when you are in. But before you apply and after you're admitted, you got to do some thinking about where the best fit is for you. We talk about match and fit, where one is you getting into that school, the college deciding that you're right for them, but then you also are in the power driver's seat after that, where you have to decide which college is right for you out of the options that you have. And there are a number of different things that should be on your mind as you make this decision. The first is there are a lot of different types of school. When we talk about college versus university, that's often a bit of a size difference. My wife's alma mater is Columbia College. It's a smaller private college in Columbia, Missouri. And it is a college because they have one big school. Whereas Washington University in St. Louis is a university because there are four different academic divisions. There's a College of Arts and Sciences, there's a College of Engineering, there's a College of Business, and there's a College of Art and Architecture that are all part of WashU. So that's the distinction there. And that might help you learn, do they have the program that I want? Will I have a cohort of other students who are involved in that program? How big of a school am I looking for? Our program is focused on students who are looking at four-year college, but some students who are still looking for four-year degrees choose to start at a two-year college and then transfer to a four-year college. That is also a perfectly valid route to go through. That can be something to look into. Some institutions are very targeted to a specific academic pathway. I think of the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy here in St. Louis. That is a place that has a very, very targeted mission. They do nursing, they do pharmacy, they do a few other health professions. They do not have architecture. They do not have computer science. They have a very narrow focus. And if that's what you want, that could be a great place for you. You'll meet lots of like-minded people. But if they don't have your program, don't apply there. Research institutions. WashU and many other colleges on the STARS list are Tier 1 research institutions. And that means that we get a lot of federal and private research grants, and that most of our faculty are involved in research. There are 28 Nobel laureates affiliated with WashU, mostly for research they've done in physics and chemistry and a wide range of other fields. So if you are someone who's looking to do research in college, you might look for a research institution. Both public and private research institutions, highly selective and not highly selective, are out there. And then technical and trade schools. If you are someone who is looking more to get into the workforce, you're probably not on this call. But if you have friends who are looking for that, who want to be a lineman, who want to be an electrician, technical or trade school is a great place to do that. You can be very successful in those fields. It's very steady, stable work. Funding also makes a difference on the culture of the college that you may be looking for or applying to. Private colleges versus public and state colleges are able to do things that public colleges cannot do. For example, all faith-based institutions, we're thinking of College of the Ozarks, we're thinking of Missouri Baptist, we're thinking of St. Louis University. They have to be private because they can't receive state funding if they are religiously affiliated. So if you're looking for a faith-based college, you are inherently looking for a private college. Public colleges have different restrictions on what they can do, but also they're often receiving state funding, federal funding that opens up other pathways at those places. They're often a little bit larger as well. So it's all down to the kind of experience you're looking for. There are also some institutions that have a specific mission or culture. There are historically black colleges and universities. There are Hispanic serving institutions that have large populations of those specific cultures and backgrounds. There are still some women's colleges that are out there in the U.S. In Columbia, Missouri, there's Stevens College. That's still a women's college, if that's the kind of experience that you're looking for. And then, of course, as we're talking about, there are highly selective institutions that tend to have their own culture because it was challenging to get in, and you went through a process to get there. When you think about where you want to go, it's really important to look at the campus, visit if you possibly can, because getting boots on the ground there will really teach you a lot about the campus. If you can't get to campus, do a virtual tour. Look at photos, look at what people are saying on your social media platform of choice. Try to learn about the vibe there. But broadly think, before you even apply somewhere, what kind of location do you want? Do you want a campus that is in a city, in a suburb, in a smaller town? Do you want something that is closed off? WashU is a good example of a closed campus where although we're in St. Louis, a city, We are kind of closed off in our own area of the city. We have big buildings that line the whole campus and a big green area in the middle. And what that means is you can go out into the city and enjoy it, but you come back and you're in your own less than 10,000 people community where you live and eat and go to class. So you have that kind of space. Whereas when I went to college in Washington, D.C., just down the road from me was George Washington University. And that university is a very open cityscape type of college where the buildings are on either side of major city streets. And you cross at a crosswalk to get from your dorm hall to your lecture hall. And some people like that and some people hate it. What is it for you? When we think about size, how big of a school do you want? WashU is considered a medium school, 7,000, 7,500 undergraduates, thereabouts. A small school might be Westminster College in Fulton. I think they have roughly 2,000 students, maybe a little smaller than that. A large college, Mizzou, has about 30,000 undergraduate students. That may be bigger than the town that you currently live in. For some people, that's great. You have so many opportunities, you'll meet so many people. For some people, that's very overwhelming. So think carefully about what kind of experience you want there. And it's also important to think about how far you want to go from home. Some people are eager to go a long ways from home. I flew across the country for college. It was a 5-hour flight for me to go. And that was good for me. I got to be independent and really make new connections and try out living on my own. But I did get homesick sometimes, and it was very hard for me to get home if I was homesick. Some people want to stay close so that they can stay connected to parents. They want to stay able to help out on weekends if that becomes necessary. They want to stay within a 2 or 4 or 6 hour radius, and that is perfectly valid. Find what you want to do, what you are comfortable with, and look at colleges within the radius that you're comfortable with. It's also important to look at programs and values of the school that you're looking for. The thing that I say over and over again when talking to students who get excited about a college is, do they have your major? Make sure every college has a list of programs that is posted. Make sure they have your major. Make sure that if you want to do a minor, they have that. Make sure they have the certificate programs you're looking for. If you want to do research, make sure that they do that. Make sure they let you do that early on and not just in your last year of college. Check into those things. Their websites are a great resource, and so are your advisors. We are so happy to help you check on that. Some colleges have big, broad core curriculums that you have to complete. They will have required English and math and science courses just like your high school does. Other colleges are very open in their curriculum. They might say you need to take a couple of classes in this category and then just your requirements for whatever your major is. WashU is one of those pretty open places. There's only one required class and there are like 7 or 8 different versions of it. So you are not very restricted. Do you like structure, or would you rather be able to take all the classes that interest you right off the bat? Mission statements. Every college posts a mission statement that tells you what they're about and what they stand for. That is an important thing to read to figure out if you are going to be comfortable on a college campus and if your values align with theirs. Read that before you apply. Make sure this is a place where you share their values and you believe what they believe. Otherwise, you may be running into a lot of people who you may butt heads with, and that may not be as comfortable an experience. And I do really recommend visiting schools, as many as you can. Some high schools, maybe yours, will offer you a couple of days off that you can skip school if you're going to a college visit and you bring back proof. And most colleges will give you that proof if you ask for it. So visit if you can. Other things to consider. Colleges have very different student life cultures. Some of this is based around the size that they are, but some of it is just based on the campus vibe, really. One thing that affects the vibe a lot is whether it is a commuting campus or a residential campus. My wife did her graduate school studies at University of Missouri St. Louis, which is very much a commuter campus. Most of the people there live in St. Louis, and they don't live in the residence halls. They drive there every day, back and forth. And that feels very different from somewhere like WashU, where you are required to live on campus your first 2 years. You can move off campus after that, but everyone, even if you live 5 minutes away, has to live on campus their first 2 years. And you live in a residence hall, and you have a group and orientation leaders whose whole job is to make those communities with you. This is something that really, really changes the way that student groups work, and how well you'll get to know people on your campus can have a really big impact. It's important to look at dining options. How much do dining options cost? What kind of food is available on campus? Look up on social media if people say the food is good or terrible. That may be something that helps you make your decision. What kind of student organizations do they have on campus? Do they have ones that you would be interested in participating in? Do they have a lot? Do people turn out for the sports games? Do they have that school spirit? Does that matter to you? Do they have the sports that you want to do? If you're an engineer, do they have engineering clubs? If you're interested in performing arts, whether as a major or a sideline, is there an active performing arts scene on campus? These are things you can find through college websites and also through social media. And if you need any help doing that research, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you look. Athletics, residential life, student faculty diversity, student happiness, these are all things that you can look up through websites and that may really affect the way that you look at a campus and how happy you would be there. So it's very worth looking into before you apply and before you decide. And then the super fun one, cost of attendance. You have some direct costs, is what we call them, that are going to show up on all of the statements that you get from a college you're admitted to. And these tend to be tuition, what you're paying to go to class there, and housing and food. If you're living on campus and eating in the meal halls, dining halls, what does that cost? And there's usually a little bit of wiggle room depending on what kind of room you get and what kind of meal plan you get. But these are the two big direct costs. And we want to make sure that those are costs that are sustainable for you and your family. Often in these days, going to college involves some amount of loans. If that is something that you really want to avoid, talk to us about looking into scholarships. Talk to us about making sure we fill out all the financial aid documentation. Have us connect you with financial aid offices to talk to them, and we will do our best. But if you have to take loans, the rule of thumb that we like to live by is do not ever take out more than you will earn in your first year out of college. That will make it very, very difficult to pay back if you do that. So be careful, be judicious about that, and remember that not all the costs that you're going to have to pay for college are going to show up on that award letter as direct costs. There may be a health plan that you have to buy. There may be a student activities fee. Usually those are pretty low, but they may show up on there. More importantly, think about the fact that you may want to go out to eat with your friends off campus sometime. What does that cost in the area? Are you going to have to take an Uber there? What does that cost if you're doing it regularly? What do your supplies for your dorm cost? What does the university provide? What do they allow in those residence hall rooms? If you're going home regularly, how are you getting there? Are you flying? Are you driving? If you are driving, you're going to need to budget for gas. You're going to need to find somewhere to park your car while you're there. Some colleges are very restrictive about this. If you come to WashU, they will tell you do not bring a car here. And that can be challenging because someone may have to drop you off. There will be nowhere to park it. And if you find somewhere, it'll be very expensive over the course of the year. Can you get around in the city from the school? WashU's flip side to not having good parking is that they provide you with a free Metro Pass. So you can ride the buses and the light rail for free the whole time you're a student. So thinking about how you're going to get around, what that may cost you, and how is this college about merit scholarships? Some colleges hand out a lot of these. They will give you merit scholarships for high GPA and SAT. They will have you write an essay to be in competition for one. Some colleges, like WashU, they're very, very competitive. Doesn't mean you won't get one, but they are very, very competitive to get. And most of the financial aid at WashU is need-based. So if you are not in an income level where you're getting need-based aid, you may have to look into other options to make sure that you are able to cover the cost of attendance. With all that said, let's spend a little bit of time chatting through some application tips. When you apply to a highly selective school, we collect a lot of information to help us make decisions about who we're going to admit. We're going to ask you first off some basic biographical information. We want to know your name, we want to know your age, we want to know where you're from. Two things that we really want to know about, because these matter a lot to colleges, are you first generation to college? The way we define that is, did either of your parents finish a four-year degree? If not, you are considered first generation. That may open up scholarships for you. It may open up membership in different communities on campus that are support communities with other first generation students. And it may play a role in, we want first generation students, so that might boost your admissions chances a little bit. Are you a legacy? Some colleges will give preference in admissions, sometimes a small bit, sometimes a lot, to students whose parents or sometimes grandparents attended and graduated from that college. So if you have a parent who went to a college and had a great time there, it may be worth applying there to see if That gives you a little boost in getting in. We ask about languages you speak, and we ask a lot about your high school. The reason that we ask about your high school is that we really want to know the context that you're in, and that kind of ties into our academics. When we ask for your academics, we're going to get sent a transcript by your counselor, and that transcript is going to tell us about two things. It's going to tell us about your grades, how well you did in class, and your class rank, if your school ranks. Colleges love to see someone in the top 10% of their graduating class. They love to boast about having lots of top 10% students. And it's also going to tell us about the classes you took, the rigor. Some schools, rigorous classes means honors. Sometimes it means dual credit. Sometimes it means AP. But the reason that we're collecting information about your school is we know not every school has a bunch of AP courses. Not every school has one AP course. So we're evaluating you in your context. We are never going to say this student didn't take AP, so we're not admitting them if your school doesn't have any AP. So we're looking in that context, but we are looking for students who are taking challenging courses so that we know they're ready for challenging courses in college. And we want students who are doing well, typically A's and B's. If you're showing us C's on your transcript, or hopefully not lower, it may be a good idea to take some time to explain what happened there and how you've grown from that, to make sure that we understand why you're going to do better and be successful in college before you apply. That's what the school profile is doing for us, is giving us that context. That's something that your counselors will have created for us. So we'll be able to look at the list of courses, compare it to what you've taken, look at your rank, see how you're doing overall. Most highly selectives also ask for letters of recommendation. And this is your chance to have people, teachers especially, who know you well, tell us about how you are in the classroom and as a person. Some colleges are going to say, we specifically want a letter from a STEM teacher, science, technology, engineering, or math. Some colleges are not worried about that. WashU does not care what kind of teacher the letter comes from. What I say is make sure that you get a letter from someone who likes you and will say nice things about you, and someone who knows you well. Many schools are going to say 2 letters, one from a teacher and one from a counselor. If your counselor is not someone you've connected with a lot yet, it may be a good idea to give them a brag sheet, a list of things you've been involved in at the school, so that they can write a more informed version of that letter to talk about all the different things that you've done, people you've connected with, ways that you've contributed to the school. You can do more than 2. Don't do 7. Don't do too many, because we have a limited time to read through your application, and we don't want to have to just skim your letters. We want to really read them. If you do more than 2, get people who know you a different way. Instead of another teacher, we already heard you're great in the classroom, give me a club sponsor. Give me a religious leader. Give me someone you worked for. Give me someone you volunteered with. Show me someone who can shed a different light on you to expand the application reader's understanding of what you're bringing to the college. Testing this year continues to be complicated because a lot of colleges have very different policies on what they do with testing. A few colleges are test blind. What that means is if you submit testing to them, they will say, shouldn't have bothered. We will not even look. We don't want any testing at all. That's a pretty small minority of colleges, but there are some. So look at those policies. A lot of colleges, including WashU this year, are test optional. You can choose if you want to submit test scores or not. At WashU, our middle 50% on the ACT, our average score, is pretty high. It's a 33 to 35. If you are way, way below that, in the mid-20s or lower, I would encourage you to use the test optional option. That way, this is not something that will hurt your chances. If you are pretty close to that range, I would encourage, or you feel broadly that your score represents you very well, I would encourage you to submit that score because it typically will help you. Some schools are test flexible, which means they want to see test scores, but they don't just take the SAT or ACT. You can also submit AP scores. You could submit IB scores if your school offers that, or if you want to take them independently. And that works out better for some people who like the format of those tests. This is a pretty small group of schools, though. And then some schools, more now, have gone back to test required, meaning if you want to get in, you must submit usually an ACT or SAT score to be considered. All of schools are going to have this pretty prominently listed on their website. The monkey wrench in the works this year is that the ACT science section is now optional, but some schools that are test required still require science. So look up what the school's policy is about, do they require tests or are they optional? And what are they doing about science if you're doing the ACT over the SAT? And that may help you make a decision about how to apply and where you want to apply. We're going to ask at most highly selectives for an activities list. When we ask for this, we want to see what you're bringing to the community because we want active, involved, engaged people who have a wide range of interests and hobbies that they're passionate about. The classic things to put on your activities list are things like school clubs, but it does not need to stop there. You have room for 10 activities if you're using the Common App, and if you have more than that, you can put them in the additional information section. I promise we read it. So don't just tell us about your school clubs. Tell us about what you do in your community. Do you volunteer? Are you involved in charity or mentorship? A lot of people in Missouri do A+ tutoring. That can be a great thing to put on there. If you have done something professionally, if you have a job, we're very impressed with that. Most high school students don't work. If you're working 20, 30 hours a week, we are blown away by that. Tell us all about that. If you've done a job shadow, tell us about that. That's fantastic. We'd love to see those interests coming through. If you have done some kind of career development class where you're off for half the day and you go to a job, tell us about that. That's great. That's a unique experience that not all students have. And if you have family responsibilities, some people are caring for younger or older family members. Some people are working on a family farm. Those are also parts of your identity. They are things that you do that not every student does. Tell us about that. That is absolutely valid. And if you have won honors, you took state, you went to boys or girls state, you were at the FBLA competition, you were at Science Olympiad, any awards that you've won, Scholastic Keys for our artists, any of that, please tell us about that. You can put that in the activities list, you can put it in additional information, and there is an awards section on the application. We would really, really love to see this and hear more about it. If you've done research, tell us about that. We'd love to hear about it. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about writing. Virtually every highly selective is going to ask you for a personal statement. We could do a whole workshop on these, and with some of you I already have. We're happy to help you with these. We're happy to edit your essays. Give us a couple days and we will get you some feedback on those. But broadly, this is your chance to share your own voice. We've already heard from other people in your letters of recommendation that you're a great student that we want to have. We have seen your transcript. We have heard your activities list, but we haven't heard from you in your own words. So this is your opportunity on a topic of your choosing, they're usually pretty open, to tell us something that's important to you and your story. Supplemental essays are not required by all colleges, but many highly selectives will also have a shorter supplement specific to that college. So you can use your personal statement to apply to WashU and UChicago, but your supplement's going to be different. At WashU, they ask, in 200 words, what do you want to study at college and why? It's a great opportunity to talk about what program you're passionate about and how you got passionate about it and what you're going to do on campus. At UChicago, they like really quirky essays. They've had prompts like find X, and you write an essay about that, or where's Waldo really, and you write an essay about that. So look up what those supplements are and make sure you take some time to review those because they not only affect your chance of admission, we do read them, but they also often are where we go to look for scholarship recipients. So make sure to put some time into those. Sometimes there are additional optional essays. WashU offers one where you can tell us about a community that you're part of, whether that's being in choir or being in a small town or having an immigrant ancestry or being part of a faith community, any of those, if you want to tell us about that. Or you could tell us about an experience that shaped you if you didn't cover it in your personal statement. If you're applying for art or architecture, you're often going to be asked for an art portfolio of your work. And some schools also ask for a resume, just a straight list like you would do applying for a job. So look at what the requirements are for the specific schools that you're applying to. Some schools consider demonstrated interest. What that means is you get a little boost in your admissions chances if you have attended a campus visit or done a program with them or a virtual event, or sometimes just reach out to an admissions representative to show that you're interested. A lot of colleges don't do this. WashU does not, but there are colleges that do. And if they do, and you look into that, often it's not too hard to demonstrate that interest. If you want to get in there, you might as well send the email, attend the webinar. And then it is also worth mentioning that schools do have to consider the balance of programs. And it's also important to make sure that the school has the specific program that you're looking for and to look if there are specific requirements for those majors. At WashU, for example, and many other colleges, if you want to come do engineering, then we really want to see calculus and physics on your transcript. If you don't have those, you're at a disadvantage. WashU also wants to see calculus for pre-med students and business students, as well as students who are interested in hard sciences like physics. Other colleges may not require that, and if you're applying to WashU for political science, those aren't required. But look into what the specific requirements for majors and departments are at a school you may be applying to, and that will be important if you want to be admitted there. So, to wrap up and finalize, if you're looking at applying to a highly selective, there are a couple of different steps that I'm going to recommend that you go through. If you are early in this process, especially for our juniors or for seniors who haven't started applying yet, start planning with your counselor what this is going to look like to reach your academic goals. Juniors, think about what classes you've taken so far and you're going to take next year. Seniors, if you're missing a class that you need for the major you want, like calculus, it's time to start thinking about how you can get that. There are ways to take it online. There are ways to take evening courses. If this is something that you really want to strive for, you need to figure that out soon. And that can be challenging. If you are worried about that, please reach out to me. I have ideas for you. Make sure that you are getting involved in ways that are meaningful to you in high school, whether that's working or job shadowing or doing research or being in clubs. Get involved, seek out leadership opportunities, seek out opportunities to volunteer. Think about and do research into what kind of application you're going to use. A lot of places use the Common App, but if you want to apply to UCLA, you've got to use the UC System application. So even if you do all your other colleges on the Common App, you're going to have to do one a different way. Look into that, make sure you know. And look up those deadlines. Schools will post priority financial aid deadlines. So that's the date that you need to have everything in if you want to get your scholarships best chance. And they will have deadlines for their different application rounds. If you miss that deadline, you're not going there. So set your reminders. Make sure that you know when those deadlines are. And thinking of giving people time, if you haven't asked for letters of recommendation yet and you're a senior, ask now. Ask soon. This is not something that you want people writing in a day or on the last night with 2 hours before the deadline. Give them time to write you a good letter. It's also a good time to start writing your essay if you haven't already. I know that can be a big, intimidating process, and it's hard to start, hard to think about what you want to write about. Please come to your advisor. We're so happy to brainstorm topics with you, to give you feedback. That is part of what we are here for. We're very happy to help with this. So will be your counselor, I suspect, or your RUDET advisor if you have one. Great people to bounce questions off of. It's also a good idea to chat with your family about information you may need. You'll be asked some questions on the application about family background, where they went to college, if they went to college. It'll be important to know some stuff about how much your family can support you financially as you're going to college. That may shape where you end up going and what kind of financial aid you receive. And if you're worried about money, many highly selectives charge an application fee, money you have to pay to submit the application. But there is often a fee waiver available if that's a burden for your family. At WashU, there is a $70 application fee. If you're applying to 10 schools like WashU, that's a lot of application fee money. But if you are applying for financial aid at WashU, then you are able to check a little box on the application that requests a fee waiver, and we will waive that fee for you to make sure that you can apply.